E, City Yards Master Plan. We have 2 requests to speak.
And a familiar team with a staff presentation. Hi there.
Hi, good
now
evening.
We're over on the other side of town.
Pardon?
Now we're over on the other side of town
Yes,
with
we are.
another new idea.
We are. With another very exciting project. Good evening, I'm Susan Klein, the Assistant Director of Public Works, and I'm very pleased to introduce the City Yards Master Plan project tonight, which is a conceptual plan to guide redevelopment of the Yards property at 2500 Michigan Avenue in a phased rollout which will minimize disruption of operations and will allow for continued operations out at the yards, and also provide for incremental funding for the project. This project addresses the inadequate facilities that serves as the heart of the city's maintenance operations. The city yards has grown to absorb our trade shops, our resource recycling and recovery operations, water resources, street and fleet services, traffic operations, and our fire training facilities. It's a very, very busy place. And with all of those functions out at the yards, it functions on a 24/7 basis. There are also a number of customer service elements that are in desperate need of improvement as well. So this slide shows how, unfortunately, the yards has not adequately served these maintenance operations for many years. The site was acquired by the city in the 40s, and even into the 90s, you could see when we first initiated the City Yards Master Plan, the site became increasingly cramped and outdated, continuing its decline. And now I'll hand it off to Miriam, who's going to go through some specifics of the project.
Thank you, Susan. City Yards houses more functions and employees than can be accommodated, and public landscape and custodial services have to be located off-site along with equipment. Public landscape has 79 staff off-site and 88 specialty vehicles off-site. Uses and technologies have changed, but the facility has not. By building out the underutilized 4 acres to the south and organizing the entire site for current needs and uses, divisions could be consolidated, improving efficiency, function, and therefore customer service. Additionally, the unstabilized closed landfill creates ongoing mitigation and cost to the city. This represents the existing site layout. Michigan Avenue is to the north, Delaware swings around to the south side, Stewart Park is on the east, and on the southern section where Allen Company in the old Hanson Aggregate area is the underutilized 4 acres that we seek to incorporate into this master plan. The current plan would reorganize the site to optimize functionality. It would optimize site access. It would improve the circulation, which is extremely congested with all of the vehicles, trash trucks, and well, any number of vehicles that are out there. It would maximize the use of available land. It would maximize sustainability. We would explore shared parking, improve customer service, and enhance the Michigan Avenue frontage and mitigate the closed landfill impact. This shows the new master plan layout. So it's very hard to see that. The orange in the upper left-hand corner would be a new fleet maintenance building. The light yellow area in the north center would be a new parking area. Water resources is on the very east side and would remain there. The turquoise area down next to Stewart Park and next to the community would be a 2-story facilities maintenance and custodial services building, which would, because it's acquired or functioned, provide some buffer to the community and Stewart Park. In the central area surrounded by purple is the new fueling area. Purple is resource recovery, and the red area would be the new fire training area. This slide shows the proposed initial phases, which primarily mitigates portions of the closed landfill, relocates the fueling and other functions to allow fleet maintenance to move into that northwest corner. When the master plan was developed, the phasing plan was to allow expenditures to be incremental and to address components in the greatest need. If this entire master plan was to be done at one time, it would be $115 million. The initial phase proposed would be approximately $38 million. But further design, cost estimating, and phasing studies could allow us to get a more accurate number on that. Staff is to develop a financing plan to include a combination of long-term public works reserves, enterprise funds, public-private financing for the parking structure, and other financial opportunities. The recommended action would allow a design-build team to work on an initial concept, cost estimating, and phasing. Staff would return to Council to present these results and seek approval to negotiate a design GMP and proceed into the design phase. Thank you.
Does council have any questions for staff based on that presentation? Councilmember Winter.
Yeah, I actually have a lot of questions. So in the staff report, it notes that there seems to have been a bunch of wild cards in all this. The biggest of which seems to me the idea that we might potentially have to cite the facility for the Olympic Basin water treatment plant at the Master Yards, correct? And so here we're being asked to go ahead with this plan, but we might have to squeeze another pound. We're always trying to squeeze 5 pounds in a 2-pound bag, and now we might have to down the road squeeze another pound in.
So when you look at this in context, let's see if I can get this. So you see Stewart Park. Essentially what that would be, we actually took additional soils borings in that area. It would be partially under Stewart Park, at which point if we did go ahead and do that, it's well located to service the Olympic water treatment area and be able to start cleaning up that water resource. But if we did go ahead and do that, it would be mostly under Stewart Park, at which point we would then revitalize Stewart Park as well, which has had its issues with the landfill, and it has ongoing maintenance issues because of that.
So this 100-foot by 170-foot treatment facility that's, I mean, I understand we could put the underground water storage tanks under Stewart Park, but they still have to, is the 100-foot by 170-foot treatment facility have to be above grade, or can it be below grade?
Martin's going to answer that question.
He's the man for it.
As Councilmember, at this point in time, we're looking at the treatment facility itself. We're doing the initial study on that, but it would be above grade. The issue is we've got a sort of a footprint of a site based on what we've done at the Arcadia plant. And as we're going back and reviewing the technology and obviously the treatment trains and processes that would be necessary to achieve the state-required water quality for the Olympic Basin type water, that's the initial study that we're doing now. But we anticipate that purple area that you see, as Miriam said, at the corner of Stewart Park there, that would be the above-ground treatment process. What we could put underground, we would look at that, primarily maybe some of the pumping apparatus, but the reservoir itself would be something we would look to put underneath Stewart Park, and that would then allow us to rehabilitate that park, and on top of that reservoir would then be the new park facility itself, which would sort of give us a chance to rehabilitate that facility, but then reutilize that top deck of a reservoir, which is done in a number of places, as park space.
No, I mean, that's a great idea. I used to coach AYSO at that field with kids under 6, and it slopes enough, and they can't kick the ball. And you had to switch at halftime because the ball would just roll into the goal without the kids kicking it to level things out. So if I understand you correctly, you're talking about this treatment facility would be at the very end of that dog leg that sticks up there, that purple
Yes,
dog?
that purple dog leg. That
Okay.
Again, that's just a space allocation. Again, we haven't decided that for sure. That's one of 3 sites that we're looking at.
Yeah, but if
that's
we
the
go there,
concept
it's
that we're
available
exploring.
there.
Yes, that's the space that we reserve for that.
And then I have to say I had a little trouble reading the site plan because it specifically doesn't tell you which buildings are 1 story or which are 2 stories. And the whole plan strikes me as, do we look at consolidating uses by going up more stories? Are we
Yes.
governed by any height constraints?
Well, there are height constraints here.
But we can change those.
We can. So there is stacking occurring almost everywhere, and obviously, even with the parking, we are looking at potentially raising that higher with a change in the height limitations. So almost all of the buildings you see here are multiple stories at this point. They are stacked. There's one thing that I know a lot of people comment on is because of the size of the vehicles, the number of the vehicles that use this, and the fueling areas, circulation is actually extremely dangerous right now. So the reason to stack almost all these buildings is to provide as much clearance as possible for turning radiuses of these enormous vehicles within this site. So yes, they are all multiple stories.
The reason I ask is because we're also, as we heard, there's the possibility of a rehabilitation of Stewart Park. And I don't know what the protocol is here. Maybe I'll pass this rendering to the council and then we can give it to the clerk for the public record. But it has been pointed out to me that it's conceivable to take that dogleg section there that's adjacent to Stewart Park, and if we took that out of the yards plan, you can actually get a full-size soccer field in there, and we clearly have a dearth of playing fields here. So I'm wondering whether there's any possibility of taking that's the water and wastewater buildings there. Is there a possibility of stacking those further and creating the possibility of creating new open space?
I think it's been discussed that the parking lot that is there, is potentially available for that. Although it doesn't show on this, the water, wastewater, and other functions have a number of storage areas that are not shown there that it looks like circulation. So I'm not sure there's as much available space as it appears. However, it has been discussed that we could use that parking area adjacent to Stewart Park and create more space for the park.
Okay, because I think that's something we should bear in mind going forward, because we are hard pressed to find additional playing fields in this town. And then I don't have a pointer, but the site we're looking at now is much larger than the existing site. And we're gaining real estate. We getting rid of the Allen recycling facility, or how do we gain that additional real estate?
The Allen Company and the Hanson Aggregate is largely responsible for the additional 4 acres to the south. The other thing is that the city had a tipping area that is no longer being utilized.
So what happens to Allen and Hanson?
Hanson's been gone
Hanson's
for
gone, so
several years.
What about Allen? Do we need that recycling facility? I guess that's...
We've been in discussion with Allen as well as SCD. If you'll see right at the corner where the aqua area is, that little sort of perpendicular building in the roadway, we've carved out a portion of the yards for... That's an area of the yard that we've carved out. Unfortunately, I don't think this thing will work. But essentially what that allows us to do is provide a reserve of space that we potentially could put a recycling processing facility in. We've had conversations with Allen. We've had conversations with Southern California Disposal, because it is right across the street from their existing operations. The consolidation of those facilities would make some sense. So we're certainly conscious of the fact that we do have a recycling facility now. It cuts down our costs because we're not having to take our trucks elsewhere to do that. We want to continue to operate that in that area.
But we can operate it on a much more efficient footprint.
Yes, certainly.
Than it's currently operating on.
Yeah,
is that correct?
Currently runs a very rudimentary recycling operation, certainly outdoors, very, very low tech.
And then I guess I noticed in looking at all the different concepts which went out to various people to review, that the review comments on concept 16 said that the parking will be proposed to a developer for the Bergman Arts Center, and where there's talking about the shared parking. Has that been done yet, or is that something that's in the works, that possibility of working with the developer of the Bergman Arts Center to either pay for additional parking or pay for the whole parking?
We've been engaged in discussions with Jeff Worth and that group in regards to the parking structure. They've come back and looked at our plan. We've shared that with them. We've talked about the size of the structure we built, how many cars we can accommodate. Also talked about the timing of such, because our needs are going to be primarily during the daytime hours and into very early afternoon. Then our need drops off, which is when their needs would accelerate. The weekends we would have very limited use. So there's a very compatibility issue there that would work very well for both of our functions. They would need some additional parking during the daytime, so it'd be an incremental amount that we'd have to build extra. But we have had those discussions. We're continuing to have those discussions, and that was why in the financing, as you see there, it talks about the public-private financing. That is a concept we have in terms of working with the developer Bergamot to potentially identify a means of bringing that forward.
And then one last question. I noticed, and I just need some clarity on this since it came up earlier in the budget hearing, the Space Needs Program section of this document says that if I read it correctly, it says that the Water Division is currently off-site, but that's just part of it, correct? And you're proposing to add on, take the stuff that's off-site and add it on in that dogleg area there. Yeah,
actually not in the dogleg area, but at the very upper top. I guess it is a dogleg, the very upper top of the Yards Master Plan.
We can call it a chicken leg if you want. I don't know, it looks like a leg.
Where the existing offices are, we currently have 10 people that are off-site. Majority of staff are at the city yards, and then there's some functions that exist at our Arcadia treatment plant. This would allow us to consolidate the management with the operational folks at the city yards.
All right, thank you.
City Attorney Mutri, usually when you press your button, it means there's something immediately relevant to what was just said. So,
I'm not sure I can meet that high standard, but what I was just going to say was, since it may have gotten a little confusing because of the discussion, and of course we want our record to be clear. So the report lists aspects of the conceptual plan and then goes on to list other potential related development. As I understand the staff report and the manager's comments to me, your approval of the conceptual plan is not an approval of the other potential related development tonight. The two items listed as other potential related development are a water treatment system and shared parking. So I just don't want this later to be taken as an approval of those, because
they would
it's
be
not
separately agendized, discussed.
I think so, wouldn't they be?
Future date.
Yeah.
Thank you for that clarification, Mayor Pro Tem Vasquez.
I had a couple questions for staff on the ballpark field. I guess Stewart Park. I know that was the dump site way back in the day, and I know you still got a lot of sinkage and seepage in there. How much of it carries over to these proposed new building sites that are right up against it?
Actually, the area here, you can see sort of the faint outline, which is the border of it. It essentially, in the water area, it goes not quite to the building, then it actually covers the existing yards, fueling area, then runs parallel along Michigan Avenue to where the public safety training facility would be, or a storage facility would be, and then runs south along there into Delaware Street. So it's kind of a big, long, there we go. They found one that works. Thank you, Tom.
So it's that whole area, no?
Yeah, that's all that area there. That's all the old fill site.
Are we going to have any issues down there? Because I noticed when I was coaching on Stewart Park, there was certain seasons, I did it for several years, and some of the years it was a great little baseball diamond, but then other years you couldn't even use it. It was sinking.
Right now there's a lot of moguls out there at this point in time. If you look at the field, it seriously is a lot of moguls. What we propose to do is, part of the plan was proposed that we're looking at here. We've looked at a number of ways to try and mitigate the landfill. We know that in order to take this land and recover it, there's going to be some investment in costs. We know it's going to drive the building cost up a little higher. But what it allows us to do is, because land is valuable and because there is a way to mitigate that, it's not old landfill. It's not a lot of diapers and trash and things like that. It is inert materials as well as some organics. And that's one of the reasons why we had the methane collection system there, was to take the organics. But that's continuing to shut down, and the methane that's being generated there is reducing exponentially on a year-to-year basis. So we can know that to make the improvements there, we will be able to mitigate that methane. The inert material is essentially just basically blocks that were never compacted. They're put at different angles, and so you get fill, and as it shifts, it compacts. So we've looked at dynamic compaction, which is basically taking big, heavy 40-ton materials and dropping them on it, trying to get a compaction, but there's a concern about the proximity to neighbors and what that would do to them. So we've looked at pilings, which is probably the most most effective means for us is to put pilings on those buildings. And you see we've limited the number of buildings that would be over the landfill to try and accommodate those. And as they've indicated earlier, it would be 2 stories to try and, if we're going to put buildings in, we're going to use pilings in, we're going to consolidate those and try and keep that to the least amount of expense possible, but understanding that there will be expense with building on that site, but it is a worthwhile venture based on the value of the land and the fact that we don't have 14 acres elsewhere that we can utilize for this particular function.
And then I guess the last, you mentioned, so this would actually bring everybody, centralize everybody from the pretty much the maintenance and the yards that we have scattered. Like I'm thinking of the one even, I guess it's in West LA. What is it? Is that our treatment center?
Yeah, that's our water treatment plant. Those folks would stay there.
They'll stay there, right?
The operators. It would take the only folks in Public Works that would not be part of this plan are the public landscape folks who are currently at Memorial Park. And as the staff talked about earlier, even with this plan and providing enough space for the operations that are there, we still don't have enough room to bring in the Memorial Park folks, the public landscape folks.
Okay.
Council, we have a couple of requests to speak, so at this point, let's open the public hearing and call on Chris McLeod, followed by Andrew Hoyer. And Mr. Hoyer, if you could prepare to speak as well. Mr. McLeod, good evening.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council. Congratulations on the council members who got back in. Congratulations, Kevin, on your new position as mayor. And congratulations to Sue getting in on your first time round. The corporation yards, okay. The pylon system that was just spoken about won't really work on the landfill unless the landfill is at the end of its life, which it's not. So my suggestion is that you use eminent domain and take 14 acres or 20 acres from the airport and build new. Build a municipal corporation yards down at the airport. Then you can excavate the landfill, put in your water tanks, put live-work studios on top, and everything's a go, right? Because you'll never build gold lead buildings or even platinum lead buildings on a landfill because it won't allow you to. It'll constantly cost you money years into the future. And the pylon system is a good system, but unless the landfill's at the end of its life, it's not the answer either. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Andrew Hoyer.
I have too many questions for 2 minutes, so I'll try to
Pick your best.
do my best. I'm having trouble with later down the road, we're going to excavate the area of Stewart Park and take care of all that landfill problem to put tanks in, but we're still not going to do anything about the rest of the landfill. So that's kind of a disconnect. I don't understand that. I like the parking garage idea, and really honestly, why don't we excavate the whole landfill, build a much larger parking garage? We can charge for it. People will pay for it because it will be an asset. We could make an entrance right off the freeway into an underground parking garage. People could get out of and walk over to Bergamo Station, get on a train and come downtown. And that would alleviate a lot of our downtown traffic from everybody that's coming here. So that idea doesn't seem to have even been explored. There's a massive cost to dealing with that landfill. As it is, where it is now, it's perfectly contained, and you line a new landfill with clay. It's in a clay pit. It's a good spot for it to stay, but if we're going to do something about some of it later, why aren't we doing something about it now? That's the majority of my thoughts. We're going to impact the people that we just moved from one trailer park to another trailer park. I guess the methane is slowly decreasing, and that makes sense too. It stopped being used in the 70s. But still, you're going to have settling for years and years and years to come. The ideas they present, I read the whole Converse Consultants report. Still, probably the best bet ultimately is getting all of it out and filling it in. Thank you.
I think we have a question for you from Mayor Pro Tem Vasquez.
Actually, for staff, I'm sorry.
Oh, good.
Oh, okay. Yeah. And I just want to say that the prospect of settling on new settlers is unsettling. Thank you for bringing that up. Question for staff from Mayor Pro Tem Vasquez.
He raised the question about how old it is. I think it's older than that. Wasn't it like back in the 60s or even 50s?
That was our understanding that it closed in the 50s.
Yeah, I remember as a kid. I thought it was early 60s. But so is that considered the end of it?
Yeah, as I said, it's not traditional landfill material. It's not trash.
Right.
It's inert material as well as some organics. So it means trees and limbs that were put in there at some point in time, mixed in with a lot of rock and concrete and dirt. So it's not a traditional landfill.
So we're looking at a good 50 plus years.
Oh, it's clearly been that. The organics have gone. I think, as I said, we've seen the continuing rate of methane generation there has dropped off substantially. The pumps are not even operating full time now. They operate in partial portion of the day because they have to wait till they can gather enough methane in order to burn it off. It's really at the end of its useful life in terms of the organics. And again, the inert material is just inert material. It's just rock and rubble, just uncompacted fill.
Councilmember Himmelrich.
So we had this conversation before. I know you say it's inert material, but when I look at the historic maps of the city, it shows that area and the one north of it as the really old maps as a dump. Not that. I'm talking about if you look back at a 1930 map or 1940, yeah. But if you look at the old ones, it actually calls it the dump. And then when we started taking our trash out to the valley, I guess, then it stopped being the dump. But actually, my question's a little different. I just wanted, and that's this, that this is going to be incredibly valuable real estate because it is within an eighth of a mile of the metro stop. I mean, it literally is right there. And what I wonder, and it sort of segues off of somebody else's, what a member of the public said, is why are we putting basically public works yards within a quarter mile of the metro stop when if we remediated this property, it could be so incredibly valuable to us?
I'm not sure if there's a question in that.
Yeah, there is. I want to know if there is a question. My question is, did we consider alternative locations and whether this was, in planning terms, the highest and best use of a 14 and a half or 15 acre piece of property that's, a quarter mile or even less from a metro stop?
Well, I would be glad to attempt to answer Mr. Pastusha. From a highest and best use standpoint, there's unquestionably higher and better uses. However, the entire city depends upon the services that emanate from these corporation yards. All of the critical infrastructure that every resident and business person and visitors count on every day is either functioning through or being coordinated through this particular location. And so if you are suggesting reusing this property for some higher use, then you need to think about what is the alternate location of 15 acres of heavy industrial use somewhere in Santa Monica. And I think the simple answer to that is we can't think of any. And we even if you could begin to imagine somewhere in Santa Monica where you could wedge in 15 acres of this heavy use, we think that the community opposition would be overwhelming. This site can be reused, and we can reuse some of the infrastructure on it, so it makes sense that we continue to centralize our functions at this location.
Thank you.
Councilmember Winter.
So, Mr. Pastusha, so we're being asked to preserve sort of the master plan and concept, and I understand what we've been trying to do this for 15 years. What goes on then? We get a design, we go to bids for design build teams. We get some more opportunities with that design build team to consider the modifications that are possible, whether there is an option to go more vertical in some of these buildings and create more open space against Stewart Park or all the other things. I mean, we have other chances to potentially modify. We're not saying if we approve this concept that that's exactly the way it's going to be built.
That's exactly right. This is a concept. What we're asking to do is we've got some spacing diagrams. I mean, the buildings you saw were just a conceptual layout. That doesn't mean where they're going to be laid out. It doesn't mean even the buildings that are going to be built are at that particular location. What we're asking for tonight is, but we know that these are the kind of space that we need in this particular area to function both from the building space as well as the space for our vehicles, as well as the operations for fueling and maintenance that we need to have there. So we know that this will fit on this land in roughly this configuration. What we're asking for tonight is to direct us to go out to the design build team, which would be the same. What we'd come back to is what you had in the presentation before you. It would be a concept study to show how it would work. It would talk about what the financing options are and the plans are, and it would be sort of that first test to go forward from there to whether you decide after that point in time whether you wanted to authorize us to move forward with design. And after the point in time we'd come back with a final design, whether you wanted to have us move forward with construction. This is really just the first step in a multi-step process in which we come back to council in each step, showing the progress and reporting back on the proposed implementation of this master plan.
Because I'll be honest with you, this was a very impressive document for just about all of it in terms of the geology studies and the process and the different needs and the square footage each division needs and the number of vehicles, et cetera. What I was disappointed was when I got to the Chapter 7, which is the master plan. There just wasn't much meat to it, and we're being asked to conceptually say we're going to go forward with something that might cost on the magnitude of $115 million. And they're just, as I said, it wasn't clear from the renderings how tall the buildings were. I'm just going to bring this up because it really chapped me at midnight last night, is that we have this here is the key to the plan on one page, and then on the next page is the map, and you have to go back and forth between the color codes to find out what they use. Let's never do that again. Let's keep the color key on the same page as the site plan. It was driving me crazy. So I'm glad to know that we would have further opportunities to sort of tweak this. And I understand the need to go forward this because it is not a sexy project, but is a really important project for the city going forward. So I just needed to vent about that.
And we will make sure that if we bring back something in multiple phases, we make sure the color coding and the map are on the same page.
Yes, and maybe bigger.
we can do that as well.
That would be great. All right, thank you.
Well, the venting reminds me of the methane. Council, I guess there's not tremendous enthusiasm at this point for this plan, but as has been noted, there are only four of us here tonight, and either we're going to move something forward or we're not. So, Mayor Pro Tem Vasquez.
Yeah, I'm comfortable moving it forward, but I had a quick question for staff. As we're looking at other sites, do we still own that piece of property? It's actually, I think, in West LA, but up against the airport. When you come in through off of Citanella. That's still our property, no?
Yeah, that's actually an area we're now using to rent rental cars are parked there. But
how big? What's the acreage there?
It's relatively small.
Oh, it is small.
It's maybe 2 acres at the very most.
Oh, okay. All right. So I'll move the staff recommendation.
I will second. I'd just like to propose a friendly amendment that going forward as we go in this process that we further contemplate the ability or the possibility of stacking some more of these buildings and creating the opportunity to expand the open space at Stewart Park. Is that a friendly amendment?
Yes.
It may not be possible. I'd just like to leave no stone unturned.
Sure.
So we have a motion by Mayor Pro Tem Vasquez, seconded by Councilmember Winter, which is the staff recommendation with the addition of direction to explore stacking.
To possibly create more space at Stewart Park, I guess, is the goal I'm getting right now.
And the agenda calls for a roll call vote, so I'll turn to the clerk, and it'll be a short one with only four of us here.
Mayor Pro Tem Vasquez?
Yes.
Councilmember Himmelrich?
Yes.
Councilmember Winter?
Yes.
Councilmember O'Day has...
Councilmember O'Day had to leave at 10:43.
Gotcha. And Mayor McKinn?
Yes. And so we are moving forward on a 4-0 vote, unanimous of the council members present at this point. And council, that moves us into the home stretch in our 13 items.